Hello, my name is Neshni Naidu, and I am the owner and founder of My Edu Coach. Is your child going into grade 12 next year? How anxious and nervous are you about this important year in their lives? Is your child anxious? Um, from my experience, anxiety is a challenge for many students, and it obviously affects their learning. Today, we have with us Marion Nixon, a transformational mindset coach. And she's going to speak to us about how we can help our children reduce anxiety. Marion, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
Um, so, Marion, I've recently been introduced to something called EFT tapping, and I get very anxious. My son is going to be in grade 12 next year, so I have a lot of anxiety myself around that and everything else. And I found that tapping really helped me to settle my nerves and reduce my anxiety as soon as I became overwhelmed. Can you explain to us what is EFT tapping and how does it work?
Well, let me start by telling you what EFT stands for, which is Emotional Freedom Techniques, because it's named that because it gives people who struggle with overwhelming emotions freedom to normalize and stabilize their emotional, or I think we call it regulating the emotional system. And the tapping part is there because that describes what we do. We tap on specific points on the head and sometimes the fingers, the hand. And those points come from the acupuncture system. But this system, this tapping on these points has worked so well that a lot of research has been done on why it works and how it works. And that research shows that that the tapping calms down the part of the brain that is responsible for our emotions. And that includes things like anxiety and what we call the fight or flight response. And sometimes what people don't always think about is there's also a freeze response. And anxiety can come out as sort of hyperactivity, hyperirritability, but it can also send us into freeze where we close down and we can't do things and we procrastinate and struggle to focus. So that, yeah, and this tapping, it looks like a child's game, but it's quite fun to do. And but it really, really works to calm because it calms down that part of the brain that regulates our emotions.
Okay. Barry, I'm actually glad that you mentioned the different ways we can, that anxiety experienced, because I think we think anxiety um, we tend to think it's that anxiousness and becoming nervous and, as you said, the irritability. But the freeze is also very important because I think a lot of times parents, well, myself included, when the child is procrastinating, you think the word that is used is lazy. But we don't tend to think that it could be because of anxiety that they can't proceed and they can't move forward. So I'm glad that you actually mentioned that. Yeah, I tend to not, um, I, especially with my students, when I hear that word lazy, I've told them, you're not lazy. Don't use that word. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. What are the specifics with the tapping? What do you actually do?
Well, I think the easiest is if I just show you what happens. We
Okay.
usually start by tapping on the side of the hand.
Yeah. So does it matter which hand you
Doesn't
use?
matter which
Okay.
hand, either way, because because it originates from acupuncture, which
Okay.
is based on an understanding that our vital energy, our life force, flows along specific channels through the body. And the channels are the same on the left and the right. So
Okay.
it doesn't matter which way you do it. Both sides work.
Okay.
So we start it's tapping usually with 2 fingers on that soft part, but just below the bone of the knuckle.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we say we usually accompany that with a validating statement. So that we start to accept where we are, how we're feeling, what's going on with us. Because as long as we're resisting that, because when we're feeling bad, we don't want to feel bad. So there's a part of us that is resisting that or putting ourselves down. I shouldn't be feeling like this. I should be in control. I should, as soon as you hear the thinking in terms of must, I should, then you're probably already got some kind of resistance to what you're really feeling. So it's important to get to that real feeling and say it's okay to feel like that. It's quite normal to feel like this. Of course, I feel like this. It's a big year. It's an important year. So, and then we move on to how you're actually feeling. And let me take these off. And that you start where the eyebrow joins the nose. We tap on that little curve in the bone. And then we go to the side of the eye, also tapping on the bone, just very gently. And then on your cheekbone, under your eye, under the nose, in the groove of the chin. And then, let me change my screen a bit. Then on there's your collarbone and your breastbone, and in that sort of in a 45-degree angle there, you might feel a little tenderness, and that's the right spot. So you've got that. So it's about two or three fingers in from. So you've got that angle.
Yeah.
And there we go. Probably a little lower for you. There, that looks
Okay.
right. Can you feel the difference?
I feel the tenderness. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's 2 funny ones. One is under the arm.
Okay.
For women, more or less where your bra strap is, but I usually say if it's about a hand's width down from your armpit.
Okay.
And then another one on the top of the head. And then there are other points on the side of the finger and the thumbs. So it's on the external side of the thumb.
Okay. Oh, there. Okay.
And then the thumb side of each finger. But another way of doing that is actually just to squeeze both sides of the fingernails.
Okay.
And in fact, that just doing that, just the fingernail squeezing helps to calm. So you've already got a takeaway that you can use. When you're feeling stressed, squeeze the sides of your fingernails until you start feeling calm. And if you slow down your breathing at the same time, that'll happen even quicker.
Okay. I must tell you, as soon as we started, I actually just felt my nerves. I could feel my breathing sort of slow down already. So it's and it's amazing that it's such a simple, um, not a simple. It's easy. It's not something complicated and difficult to do. And actually, look, um, the tapping that I've done was obviously all of the different points and well, I didn't use the collarbone, or sorry, under the armpit, but I did everything else. So this is new. The fingers. I haven't. This is the
Yes.
first time I've done that one.
Yeah. When EFT was developed, it didn't include the head point, and it did include fingers, and there's another point on the back of the hand here, which was also it's also very useful for calming anxiety. And then some people realized that you didn't actually have to do all the points. So they developed what was called the short version.
Okay.
And that they left out the hand points and they added in the head point.
Okay.
And that's the most commonly used form now. But there is what's called a clinical version, clinical EFT, which is used in the research process because
Okay.
for research to be scientifically validated, you have to use the same
Yes.
format every time. And because the research started with the original form of EFT, what was then called the long form, that has now become what they call the clinical form of
Okay.
EFT. And
And
those finger points are very useful. And I'm very glad that that was the original form that I learned,
okay.
because those finger points are very useful to know about. But they're not
Um,
often used in regular, uh, the regular use of EFT.
yeah, because the reason why I mentioned the finger points, it's if a child is sit or student is sitting in an exam room, they're not going to do all of that.
No,
But
no.
this is something that
Yeah.
they can quickly do, as you're sitting, you're becoming anxious in that exam or test.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that you introduced that one or you mentioned that one because I think that's something they
I
can
teach
start
that.
with.
Yeah. I do some volunteer trauma counseling, and that
Okay.
I always teach to the people who come for counseling, because so you can do it with your hands in your lap, and when there are people
Yes.
around, they probably won't notice you doing it. If
Yeah.
they do, they won't think anything of it. It'll just be like a personal quirky thing that you do. Or if you're at school or in a meeting or something, you can, if your hands are under the desk or under a table, people aren't going to see it at all. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful technique to have.
Okay. Um, and you mentioned validation. So do you do any, not chance, but like, would you say anything while you're doing the tapping? Or do you,
Well, to start, just the usual way of starting, when we start on the side of the hand, is to say, even though I'm feeling anxious, I choose to be calm. Or even though I'm feeling anxious, that's okay. It's a big year. Of course, I'm anxious about the year. Or something. So you make it okay to feel the way you're feeling.
um,
Mhm.
so thank you, Marion, for that insight. So I wanted to ask, tapping, do you do it, is it better, does it work better in person or can it be done online?
It works equally well in person and online. And that has actually been part of the research that people have tested. The results are exactly the same.
Okay. And can it be done in a group setting? I know the benefits might not be exactly the same, but can it be done in a group setting?
Yes, it can. And the benefits are still good, very good. Even though obviously when you're clapping in a group, the wording might not be specific to you, but we have this thing called borrowed benefits that has been discovered from doing group sessions of tapping, that even though the words aren't necessarily fitting for everybody, you still get the benefit, because the benefit is in the tapping. That is the calming your amygdala, that part of the brain that's responsible for emotions. And so that stays the same. And even though the words might not be fitting, the words are really just there to help your mind, your conscious mind, stay focused and notice the shifts that are taking place.
No,
But
thank you.
the self is the magic.
Okay, no, that's wonderful. So next year, I've spoken to Marion, and Marion's going to be um, running some workshops next year to assist grade 12s in reducing anxiety and maybe parents as well. But we will share details about those workshops in the next week or so. I will share Marion's details in the transcript of the video or in the comments. And if you would like information about the upcoming workshops for January, you can visit our website. The website link will also be in the comments of the video. Marion, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights, and again also for sharing, just giving us um, that takeaway, that tip. For me, that's something I'm going to use quite often with just pressing on the fingertips. So like I said, I am aware of the other tapping points, but that was new for me. And I think that's one takeaway or something that someone can implement immediately. So I'm
Absolutely.
very thankful for that particular technique that you shared with us.
Just remember, it's the sides of the fingernails, not on the fingernail itself.
Okay. And yeah, so just on that, and is there any specific time? Like how long would you?
No, just pause a little bit,
Okay.
maybe, but it's not a specific. But yeah, you don't want to do it too fast because then there's not sufficient contact to shift
Okay. And
the
it can be
for the
done sorry, and it can be done at any time where you're feeling anxious.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Marion. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure we will chat to you again in the future. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to those workshops next year.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.